The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by the producers of this broadcast. The material herein is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome to another episode of Scary Stories with Kalila. I am here with my co-host, Allan Gilbreath and Lynda Salazar. Welcome, guys. We're going to do another night of scary stories, only this way we're going to take it in another different direction. Because scary is in the eye of the beholder. What scares one person might not scare another, but we all share one thing in common, and we're all afraid of the unknown. And most of us are afraid of what's in the dark. So imagine it's a very stormy night. The electricity's gone out. You wake up. You hear a storm outside, but inside your house, you hear nothing. You can see nothing. You start to make your way from your bedroom down your hallway. As you go down the hallway, you realize there's nothing. There's no clocks. There's not a sound in the house. Total deprivation of any type of sound whatsoever. All you can hear is the beating of your heart and the sound of your own breath. And it's becoming more and more rapid. Certain things start running through your mind. What could be back here? Is something back here? What if someone's gotten in? As you make your way down the hallway, you start to really become more aware of your heart beating faster and faster and faster. You get to a doorway. You want to go through the door. Something compels you to go through, but then something else stops you. You very carefully and slowly reach out and you touch the doorknob. And you begin to turn the doorknob. And as you open the door, behind it is your worst fear. And what would that be? What is your worst fear? What is the most terrifying thing that you could think of that could be behind that door? And what drives us to look for these scary things and enjoy them in horror fiction and so forth? But what makes something scary? What is the mechanics behind fear? What makes a scary story scary? So we're going to be talking about that tonight. What do you guys think? Any opinions on this?
You know what? You got me in with the conversation that I was picturing myself walking.
The hook. Yeah.
I mean, my heart started pounding and I started feeling like I was walking through the house and wondering what's on the other side of that door. What is it? Can I open that door? You know, sometimes your greatest fear is going to the next level. Like, can I go and can I open that door to see what's behind? It all depends, mind over matter, on certain things.
That's a fact. That is a fact. Well, Allan has spent many, many years. Allan's among the many things that Allan is, he's a horror writer. So he spent many years looking at the mechanics of what makes someone scared. So Allan, shall we get into this? Dive on in.
Yeah, let's take the classic. I mean, deprived of any assistance. Let's just start there. You're by yourself. No one's going to rescue you. You're on your own. Some people, that doesn't faze them in the slightest. But then let's start setting the stage. It's one thing to set the conditions. You're just by yourself. Number two, you're semi-isolated. In this case, there's a storm or other event, or you're in an unfamiliar place. And then when we begin removing those tiny normal sounds that you're just so used to, you got a clock that always ticks. You always hear that little tick, 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 tick going on. The cat is always doing something. The bubbler in the aquarium these are just background white noise that more or less psychologically reassures you. And when you begin taking those things away, at this point, the mind wants them there. It's so funny because you have a lot of people have night lights, whether they call them night lights or not. They have something on in their home that has a glow or a dot or something. And it's just part of the house. Like you have a phone charger. The phone charger is always on the dresser, and it's always got a little blue dot on it. Well, folks, that's very reassuring. That just tells you, yeah, your phone is right where it's supposed to be. It's right there on the dresser, and it's plugged in, and life as you know it is normal. But if we turn off that little blue dot, and you notice how I'm really, really looking at isolating the scene, just really focusing on just the one thing. So you wake up, you sit up in your bed, all your familiar sounds are gone, and the one real clue that your life is safe and normal and good isn't there.
It's your security.
Now you have to take that next step.
Yeah, it's your safety net. Your safety net has now been removed. And so now you're wanting that safety net back, and you're wondering, why is it all like for instance, I know what I know where what Allan's talking about. Like Kalila, you're talking about the storm that's happening and the fear and what can happen. But the thing is, sometimes nature gives you this silence, and it can cause you, like, I know when I hear silence around my area, there's there's some, for me it's like something's going on, and I start paying attention to the animals, and I start dissecting everything that's going around me. I have pets that are the norm, and when I start seeing them kind of acting on the edge where everything is scaring them, then I start paying attention to, why is it all of a sudden so quiet? Why did everything, the vibration, the white noises that I'm so used to has now gone quiet? And there has been times that I've caught myself getting jumpy, because now the animals are jumpy, I become jumpy, and sometimes it's just a storm's coming, or maybe there's something around that I don't know.
Well, it kind of becomes almost a biofeedback loop. And it's because if they're uncertain and they look to you as the human to be certain, but you're looking at them going, oh, they can hear things and see things I can't hear or see. And if they're freaking out, I'm going to start getting upset. So now you begin feeding back on each other, and the stress level begins to rise. And when you take that next step and that one shadow of you moves down the wall and the cat completely loses his mind, Kalila knows exactly what I'm talking about. Because
of course I know, yeah.
The cat is already stressed to the end of the rubber band, and the fact that you're not being reassuring, that any next trigger, the cat's going to go. Which means the human is now going to go. Because if the cat freaked out, the human is not going to stand there.
Oh yeah, the cats always look at me like, "What are you gonna do? What's going on?" They're always
seeing me. I'm usually looking at the cat. They're so relaxed.
My cats just stare me down. They just stare at me like, "What are you gonna do next? What are you doing? Where are you going? What you doing?"
Well, yeah,
they're very strange animals. They're strange. But yeah, they can get spooked really easy too. But yeah,
you see where the fear stress can actually start on just the most picayune of events, the tiniest little thing, and suddenly you start becoming super ninja because something in your world is not right and you don't know what it is. All right, well, now this is where accumulated experience gets in. Now, if you're going to write the story, you're going to have to make a couple of tiny little Hence, if you're in the real situation of if you've lived on the coast, you're down there with Kalila. Gee, Kalila, how many times have your lights gone out?
Oh, a lot. I mean, it's
Yeah, thousands.
Too many to count.
All right, but see,
if the wind blows.
Because of that accumulated experience, they're less and less stressful. It's just big deal, the lights went out. Yes?
Yeah, but you know what? In the back of my head, if I did not have a flashlight nearby, I would be very disturbed by it. I would still, I think that child inside, that scared child inside of looking out the window,
okay,
is, there's still that little bit of me that goes, what if somebody's in the house?
But because that's accumulated experience.
Yeah, that's a fear. That's a fear that I have, is that somebody's going to be in my house, and that I will be.
I don't know. For me, one of my darkest fears that goes with what you're talking about has never been about the house and the lights going out. I think because I've been a big horror fanatic. I love horror movies. So I've seen about the person, in the house, or the idea of, I've seen every scenario, everything that I can think of. And of course, when you've done paranormal investigation, you're always in the dark. So after a while, you start beating the fear of being in the dark and being without the flashlight, because sometimes the flashlight just isn't your security. Sometimes it will go out, and so you just learn to adjust. And I've always been one that I really didn't want to carry a flashlight. I've always just adjusted my eyes to the dark and my surroundings. I think that was just the country girl in me, that you always adjust yourself to your surroundings no matter what. But I think my scariest fear is the fact that of dying and my mind still being energized after so many days. And I think that is why I have that fear of, what if my body still feels, even though like I can't, like Serpent in the Rainbow, how he was thrown in and he just couldn't move. He couldn't do anything. And then I think about, what about our brain? Our brain, sometimes they say the brain is the one that takes longer to die, and so that is my darkest and deepest fear, is not knowing. Like I can do the death, if I was to die, that's life, I accept that. But do I have to go through the quick process of feeling just a little freaking out?
Well, let's come back and talk a little bit more about this, because even in the most familiar situations, you can start creeping out if the conditions are right. So we'll be right back. Step beyond the veil that separates our world from the world of the spirits with me, Kalila Smith, as we uncover the mysteries of the afterlife. This is a spiritual journey as we try to discover if life really does continue after the physical death. Are after-death communications real, or do we imagine them? Get my book, Afterlife Mysteries Revealed, and find out. Afterlife Mysteries Revealed, available on Amazon.com by Kalila Smith. Okay, we're back. So, Lynda's afraid her brain's going to keep going after she's dead. Lynda, you are going to keep going after you're dead. Your spirit's going to keep going. You'll be okay, though. You don't have to be afraid of that part. It's the part of getting to that dead part that you're going to be scared of. So, Allan,
she's worried about the checkout process.
Yeah, I'm just worried about the
you don't want to get stuck in line.
Yeah, that's the problem. I'm just worried about the little checkout process. As far as going and checking in, I'm okay, but I'm worried about that little traveling. What's that process in between? After that, I'm ready for the next.
Well, a lot of people do have a fear of death. There's fear of the dark. There's fear of death. There's fear of creatures, whether they be cockroaches, spiders, snakes, monsters, sharks, what have you. Fear of critters, you might call them. Some people have fear of alien invasion. Some people have fear of war. And one of the top fears I found out was the fear of public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And Allan knows a lot about that because, Allan, I know you've had your share of conventions and cons and so forth where you go to them and you get somebody out there and they just go, and
Oh my
they can't
gosh.
talk. So, yeah, fear of public speaking. Yeah, that's some people can become frozen with fear.
And the worst case that I ever saw was a person utterly confident they could do this. Designed it, processed it. We're sitting on the stage. We're all in our little panel thing. We're waiting on that curtain to open. And the moment that curtain slid back, just that tiny little bit, and they could actually see that there were like 1,000 people sitting in the audience. The vision that they got, you could actually, it was like watching a Tex Ritter cartoon. It's one that's always, like the eyeballs pop out of their head and everything, they overreact to everything. This was like a giant Acme sledgehammer, leapt out of the audience and just took dude out right between the eyes. I'm fairly certain we even heard the Bugs Bunny sound effects. Did that boing, because this poor guy, and this was his topic. This panel was his whole idea. But the magnitude of the number of people staring at him. So it's difficult for people to understand when they go to a convention or they attend a little thing and the little person has to walk up there and say something to somebody, or they go to church on Sunday or the synagogue or wherever, and somebody has to walk out in front of everybody. And the fact that now, however many eyes that is, are now focused on you. They're watching your every move. They're hanging on your every word. The tiniest little motion is now being seen by 1,000 people. That's a crucible. Now, if we're comfortable with it, big deal.
Well, especially if they've never spoken in a large crowd. I mean, for me, it would take a while for me to adjust to that again. I don't think I'd freak out, but Kalila, help me out on this. I grew up Catholic. So being Catholic, once you made your first communion, you then became, I was part of what's known as the lecturer team. And you would go and you'd read the word on Sunday. And when you have the whole town.
I was Catholic, but I didn't do all that now.
Yeah, well, I did. I was the little Catholic girl that crowned the Virgin Mary, did it all, went to Catholic school, everything. I did it all, very involved. And we had our lectures. And of course, when we go in, there I was in front of the whole town, because of course you come from a small town, everybody's Catholic, and it's either Catholic or Baptist in the town. And the majority of the town was Catholic. And, so not only did, my biggest fear, I had to overcome that speaking in a crowd, but could I do it now? I don't know. I think as you get older, you start getting you either get into the, I think I could do it now because I don't think I care if if I make a mistake. Back then I was like, because you're in front of your classmates, you don't want to hear them, making fun of you because you said something or misread something. So it was like, you had to be on point, so now I'm just like, life is too short. Let's go in there. And if I bomb it, oh, well, it was my experience, my learning, my stepping stone.
Well, I think that we're all scared of different things. And I think that, some people tend to be scarier than others. I mean, because I know for a fact, Allan is scared of nothing. Allan fears nothing. Allan is, I don't even know if there's a word for
a
it.
distinct lack of survival
Superhuman.
instinct or good sense. Yeah.
I've seen Allan a million times do things that were just, it's like, are you really sure you're going to do that? And he's like, yeah, it's no problem. I was like, I'm going to go wait over there. So, but yeah, I mean, I tend to I have a very vivid imagination, needless to say. And so the minute I get into a situation where I'm in the dark or there's something going on, for instance, I've worked in the French Quarter for, decades. Over 25 years I've been down there, and the French Quarter is a pretty scary place. Let's face it. I mean, it can be a very fun place, but after a certain hour, it's pretty scary. So, even in a situation where I'm walking back from work, going back to my car, if it's a night where there's not a whole lot of people on the street, if I'm on a dark street or having to go down one of those alleyways and there's nothing there but me, as soon as I start kind of getting a pace going, suddenly my mind, your mind will play tricks on you. And all of a sudden, you'll see shadows, you'll see, things darting about out of the corner of your eye. And you really start getting a feeling. There's been several times that I felt the sensation of someone following me. And I stop, and I'll even see a shadow. And then I stop, and I look back, and it's like, there's no one there. But it's enough. If I keep going, I start getting that feeling that I described as somebody going down the dark hallway, because I don't know what's coming up behind me. And I'm not worried so much about the ghosts down there. I'm worried about the people.
I ain't worried about the dead. I'm worried about what the living are thinking. Yeah.
But yeah,
exactly.
that's even though it's a familiar situation, when there's not a lot of sound and there's not a lot of people around, it's a totally different atmosphere. And my mind starts kind of filling in the blanks out there, and it can be pretty creepy.
Well, we used to do an exercise in some of my more or less acting classes, of where you would take, you sit down at the table and you would take an empty plastic cup and put it out in front of you. And then you had to close your eyes, take your hands and take them all the way out to the sides, bring them back down in front of you, and then you had to just reach over and pick up the cup. Well, because you closed your eyes and then because you moved your arms in a couple of ways, you lost a little bit of that spatial recognition as to where something should be. So most people would reach for the cup and either bump into it and look very surprised, because obviously the cup was an inch or two from where they thought it was, or they would reach for it or overreach and they would miss. And again, you watch their facial expression so carefully, because you would watch them like, oh yeah, well the cup's right. Where's the cup? And you could watch their facial expression change. And this was in a very controlled environment. And, and this is where I get to go and I look at everybody watching this and I go, if you doubt me, try it. Nice quiet table, nothing else on it to knock off. Go get you a plastic cup you can't break. Put it down in front of you. Close your eyes, count to 10, kind of put your hands out to the side, bring them up, bring them back down, and then reach over and pick up that cup. Because now you're just not seeing things where they were. There's a little tiny elevated stress level that begins right there. And that moment is what, when you're trying to make a horror movie or you're writing a horror story, is that moment you want to instill in somebody. You got to take away the familiar and give them something in place of it. A street you've walked down 1,000 times before. Well, at 10 o'clock at night, the street always has 10 or 15 people on it. Well, if we take it down to 2 people or 3 people, now it's not the familiar street. And so, if we take, and people go, well, most horror is about throwing things at people and scaring people. I'm like, no, most horror is about taking something away from you, taking away that safety ledge. And it just puts you in that spot where your mind can now begin to fill in what's missing.
See, I always like to tell people, like on the tours, they would always say, is it scary? And I'd always say it's disturbing. Somebody jumps out and says, boo, for that moment, you're scared.
Right.
But if I say something that disturbs you, that's going to haunt you for a while. That's going to pop in your mind late at night when you're lying in bed with the lights off.
Yes.
And you're looking around your room and you're listening to those sounds. And you're trying to fall asleep. That's when those things are going to start creeping back into your mind and into your subconscious and haunt your dreams. But we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this stuff.
Submitted for your approval. New Orleans. Seductive, magical, mysterious, and haunted. There is no place on this earth with as much ghost and vampire activity as New Orleans. Imagine, if you will, a tour that takes you to sites in the French Quarter of actual documented hauntings. The Haunted History Tour is just that tour. Every day, every night, all year round. This tour has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN, and it's available to you. Are there ghosts and vampires in the French Quarter? Find out by taking the tour that everyone is talking about, the Haunted History Tour. For more information, call Haunted History Tours at 861-2727. That's 861-2727. This is not a Halloween spookhouse. This is real.
Okay, we're back. So, Allan, fill us in. Tell us a little bit more about what one's going to experience when they're walking down that street.
We've taken things away from you. So now your mind wants to fill them back in. So I'm going to look at Lynda and go, all right, paranormal researcher. Every time y'all see a dust speck on a camera lens, it's a what?
It's an orb.
It could be an orb. It could be an animal. I mean, a bug.
But what is your gut? What is your gut reflex? What is the first thing that pops in your head? What do you actually want it to be?
Well, I don't go for orbs that much. I'm not the orb person. So as a paranormal investigator, if I see that orb, then I want to find out why it happened. Okay. And I'm going to, look at every angle. And if I know that this place is out in the country, I know that it's nowhere where lights can be flashing in, then sometimes you got to call it for what it is. It is what it is.
Okay. So your accumulated experience says chances are it's a bug. Chances are it's something
not
like
all
that.
the time. Not all the time.
But it's your accumulated experience. So
it's very rare.
You're not going to freak out.
No, it's very rare that I've seen orbs, but and I've seen them in certain situations, but is everything always an orb? No.
Okay, well, let's change your situation a little bit. Ready? You and I are walking down the street to go bump into Kalila at the end of her tour. And now
that's just scary going with you.
So we're in an unfamiliar city, in an unfamiliar situation, which means you're probably going to be walking a little closer to me than you would normally, because it's that, herd mentality. Maybe we get close together, something won't eat us. And New Orleans has a reputation for, voodoo, of people getting disappearing in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. They have a very rich vampire tradition. So here you and I are walking down the dark alleyway, and you swear you hear another set of feet on the pavement.
Yes. I can totally say, yes, I have experienced that, because, I practically was living my second life in New Orleans, going from Texas to New Orleans before we got here. So I know how that feels, especially when you have to walk down those streets. And I was always taught from the beginning, great folks always said, stay in the light. Make sure you walk in the light. And but there I am. And yes, I am, being the paranormal investigator in me and being a curious person in me. I want to relax and hope that I hear that, and I want to stay and investigate and find out what is it, and am I seeing what I truly know that I'm seeing. But the human in me is, I'm more scared of the human nature versus that overpowers my wanting to do more further investigation, because then I'm like, well, who's around? And that herd mentality does come, because I'm like, I'm gonna be next to the big guy here, because if they're gonna come at us, I'm gonna make sure that I help him, but I know he has more strength to get us out of the situation.
So your internal reflex is curiosity, but yet fear.
Yes.
You ever been really distracted walking someplace and have somebody pass you and freak you out?
If I'm alone and it's just me by myself and I've never been in that area, and yeah, I've had that happen, those pop-ups.
Okay. So we're really getting into the nature of fear, and it's not some grandiose thing. It could just be something Kalila mentioned a month ago on a tour, that, a lot of paranormal writers, a lot of people that write vampires have visited New Orleans, have used New Orleans locations, and I have to go guilty, but you walked by it. Who poisoned somebody in this hotel? Who shot somebody in this alley? These are those little tidbits that your brain fills in when you have the absence of something. So if we're used to 15 to 30 people being on the street, and now it's just me and Linda, and we're walking down the street, we're missing 30 people. Our minds and our imaginations are now going to try to put something else in it. And if you've been told there's a loup-garou that makes people disappear, and you hear that odd sound down that dark alleyway, even though it's probably just a cat in a trash can, that is not going to be your first reflex, is it?
No, my first reflex, I know what my first reflex would be. Let's just say I'm not going to look cute walking. It become the, it'd be like, I'm ready. I'm ready. Guards are up, and I have Allan here. So, it's all guards up. Allan, I start picturing myself like in The Walking Dead. Allan, you looking towards the front, I'm going to look behind. I get all Charlie's Angel. What's going on?
It can get creepy out there. It certainly can.
It can. I'm not going to play. And that's what stops me from wanting to, because deep down, the person that always wants to find out more, the paranormal investigator in me, is like, wait a minute, I want to know, are those steps really the steps of a hidden vampire? Probably looking around, looking at us. Are we their prey? Hopefully we're not the prey where they just drop us and leave us, but hopefully we become part of their group. And darn, I hope they're good looking when they bite us.
Well, there you go.
That's all I always say.
They're always good looking.
Well, Kalila, yes.
Have you ever seen a vampire? Never.
In the books, they're always good looking. except
Yeah, he was pretty bad.
but there are good looking, but then, you know, I just want to make sure that I get the good looking one and that they get me on the day that I look glam. That way, therefore, I stay being
But
glam.
you'll look glam when you become undead. You see, you'll automatically look glam. So.
Well, it'll make me like super glam, you know, like
yeah,
glam, and then going woo, you know, because
yeah.
I just want
one of them sparkly vampires.
She wants to sparkle. She definitely.
I don't want to glitter. I don't want to glitter. I just want to make sure I have my right outfit, everything. You know, I just want to be there. You know, I don't want to be.
She has layers of fears going on here.
When it comes to
starting to come out.
When it comes to becoming a vampire, you know, I want to make sure I'm looking good. I want to make sure that, you know, that I'm wearing the right outfit. I want to make sure that my hairstyle is on point.
It's not a date.
Well, you know, I want to make sure that everything is just on point. That way, when we become a vampire, I look good. That's, you know, and that I make sure that I come out alive.
Well, or at least undead.
Well, you know, and how many people actually have these layers of thoughts walking down a dark alleyway? Well, it depends upon where you are, isn't it?
Well, it depends on where you're from, where you've been, and what you're accustomed to.
And what somebody told you that afternoon.
I would say most people in Middle America do not walk down the street and worry that a vampire is going to get them.
But if they come visit New Orleans.
If they come visit New Orleans, they probably would. Yes. Yes, they would. Then suddenly that particular scenario starts to creep into their minds. Yes.
All right. Well, you and I on an investigation had a conversation about the difference between you visiting this location and somebody from Ohio visiting this location.
Oh my gosh, that was the funniest thing. Yeah, that was in the Mark Twain bed and breakfast in Natchez, Mississippi, right above a biker bar.
Yes.
Right off of the Mississippi. I mean, literally, like if you backed up out of the place, you would go down the boat ramp right into the Mississippi River. That really creeped me out. It's very disturbing. And it was a B&B upstairs. And I picked it out because it reminded me of the French Quarter. So it looked normal to me.
Looked very French Quarter.
And
exactly. Looked very comforting to you.
We initially sat in the courtyard. And I'm talking to Allan, and Allan is just looking around at all of this stuff. And he says, there's ferns growing out of the bricks. And I said, okay. So, and then I just kept talking, and he says, no, you don't understand. There's plants growing out from the bricks. And I went, yeah, okay. And he had to finally, as he kept saying different things, and I would just go, yeah, yeah. And we get to these rooms, and he finally turns to me, looks at me, and he goes, other people do not think this is normal. And I was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And he said, other people don't. Tell him what you said. You can tell him what you said better than I can tell you what you said.
I looked at her and I said, let's face it. Somebody from Ohio already thinks this joint's haunted. Because there's a crack in the wall. There's wrought iron. There's a 3-inch thick door leading to the veranda, which is all wrought iron and overlooks the Mississippi River. And there's music, and there's one bathroom for 9 rooms. How French. You know,
and ferns and plants growing from the bricks.
And Kalila doesn't notice this because that's her native environment. And I'm sitting going, some poor guy from Minnesota is going to be staying at this, and he's going to walk by the first set of bricks with a fern sticking out of it, and his first words are going to be, oh yeah, this place is haunted for sure. Oh yeah, you betcha. You know, it's what you're accustomed to. And when you get out of that environment, once again, we've taken away your comfort zones. Your brain's going to start filling stuff in.
So let's come
Welcome
back
to that full moon. Every full moon, we accuse everybody of lunacy.
Well, some more than others, Allan. Some more than others. We'll be
True
right
that.
back. Follow me, Kalila Smith, into the mysterious world of spirits. Searching for Spirits, the ultimate guide for ghost hunters, is a concise how-to manual for anyone who enjoys a good ghost hunt. Learn the history of spiritualism, learn what a ghost is and what is not. Learn the truth about poltergeist. We'll also delve into the realm of spiritual beings that never were human, the world of demons, real vampires, and we'll look at some real case studies. This is a must-have for everyone interested in ghost hunting, from the novice to the expert. Completely updated in its second edition, this is one of the first guides for ghost hunting based on actual first-hand experiences. Available on Amazon.com. Searching for Spirits, the ultimate guide for ghost hunters, by Kalila Smith. Okay, so we're back. So let's talk a little bit about those vampires in New Orleans, because I always promise you guys a scary story. So let's talk about this, because to hear about something that happened 100 years ago is one thing, but when that thing that happened 100 years ago makes its way into our day-to-day life today, it becomes a little bit different. And back in the late 1800s, we had a gentleman. In fact, actually, it was the beginning of the 1900s. It was 1901. We had a gentleman by the name of Jacques Saint-Germain come to the city. And he came here from the south of France, and he rented a home on Royal Street and Ursuline Street. And he lived there for about 8 or 9 months. Now, this was a very peculiar man. He was a young man. He was, in his early 30s maybe. And he claimed to be a direct descendant of the Count Saint-Germain, who was an 18th century alchemist from the south of France. And oddly enough, he had a great resemblance of his ancestor. But what was very strange about this gentleman is he threw lavish parties. He had dinner parties. He had people over to eat. No one ever saw him eat or drink anything. He was never seen to eat, never seen to drink. He didn't have any type of eating utensils, no cooking utensils in his house. Anytime he threw a party, he always catered in. But it wasn't until one very strange incident one night that people began to think that perhaps he was a vampire. And it was one evening, he had been out in one of our local pubs, like people like to do in the city. And he brought home a young woman with him from a pub, and he brought her upstairs. Now, in her statement that she later gave to the police, because she did live long enough to make a statement to them, she said that while she was upstairs with him, she momentarily turned her back on Jacques. Now, she's admiring something beautiful across the room. There's this gorgeous mantelpiece, all of these little trinkets on it, and she's admiring this, and she's speaking to him across the room. And she said that he lunged up on her with what she described as abnormal speed. And with abnormal strength, he pinned her to that mantelpiece, and he bit her on the side of the neck, breaking the skin. Now, it's right about that time that a couple of drunk friends show up on his doorstep, and they're banging on the door, screaming his name. This is enough of a distraction for this young woman to pull away from him. She ran across the room. She jumped out of one of the upstairs windows, and to this day, it's bricked up on the outside. She jumped over the gallery down to the street below, falling onto Royal Street. So now it's about 2 a.m. in the morning. I mean, this guy's got drunks on the doorstep, beating on the door, screaming his name. There's a woman in the street screaming, "He bit me." The police came out. They took the woman's statement. They sent her off to Charity Hospital, where she later died from blood loss and shock. Now, Jacques, of course, has the perfect alibi. She's drunk. She's a prostitute. Now, this is a very wealthy man, very, very prominent individual. They didn't arrest him that night. They said, "Would you please come, sir, to the police station the next day and give a formal statement?" Well, needless to say, the next morning, when they found out the young woman had died, Jacques never showed up at that police station. So a couple of police decided to go on down to the house and just kind of knock on the door and ask him to come on down and chat with them a bit. But when they got down there, they noticed that the house was empty. He must have packed up in the middle of the night and disappeared. All of his clothing gone, all of his personal belongings gone, furniture still there. They walk through the house. All they find are bloodstains throughout different areas of the house, different sizes, different ages. It's undetermined how many people were brought into that house that did not get the opportunity to escape. It's also very uncertain what he might have been doing with the bodies. But the really strange thing was that in his kitchen, now there's no food in the house and no eating utensils or cooking utensils, but there's a very elaborate wine rack with bottles of what appears to be red wine. Police confiscate it and bring it down to the station. Upon further examination, they realize that it's not wine at all, but a combination of red wine and human blood. Fine Bordeaux indeed. To this day, no one knows where Jacques Saint-Germain wound up. Many people believe that he's still in the city today. Now, if you fast forward, I think the year was 1995 or 1996 was the year that we had a big blackout in the French Quarter. Very weird evening. It was in August, like it is now, and there was a blackout. All of a sudden, one of the transformers that's under the ground just blew, and everything was like poof. All the lights went out in the French Quarter. The place was pitch black. Everybody started going home. Everybody started packing up. Well, you can't imagine what the French Quarter might be like when there's not one bit of light. Only a little bit of a gas lamp every few blocks, here and there where they still have them. Well, one gentleman that was working down at one of the restaurants on Charter Street, he gave to me a very strange tale that happened that night. He said that while he was walking back from the restaurant, he walked through Jackson Square, and when he got to Pirates Alley, he started walking down the alleyway. And he saw a gentleman standing underneath a lamppost. And he said the first thing that struck him was that was very, very strange because the guy was dressed head to toe leather. Leather coat, leather pants, leather boots. It's August in New Orleans. It's over 100 degrees out there. That heat is just emanating off of those brick buildings. And this guy's leaning against an unlit lamppost. When the waiter walks by, the gentleman speaks to him. He says, "Excuse me," he says, "You got a light?" He's got a cigarette. The waiter doesn't think much of it. He pulls a lighter out and he goes to light his cigarette. And instead of saying thank you, the man says, "It's a nice night for Jack." The waiter says, "Okay, if you say so." Started walking off. Well, he said suddenly he felt a swoosh behind him. And he said the guy literally, it was as if he leaped up and then landed in front of him. Almost as if he took wings. And then he just smiled at him and took off. Now, of course, the waiter by then starts taking off running, and he got out of there as quickly as he could. But he never forgot that night, and it terrified him so much, he came and found me after one of the vampire tours, and he says, "I got to tell you about what happened." He says, "Do you think it was Saint Germain?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't." But I have to tell you that 25 years later, people are still seeing this individual in the dark crevices of the French Quarter on dark, solemn nights in the shadows, looking for a light of his cigarettes. So you have to ask yourself when you're out there, is it going to be a nice night for Jack? Think about it. We're running out of time, so let's everybody tell everybody how to hear about us. We'll be back again next time with more scary stories and some psychology about those fears. Allan, where can people find you outside of this place? Many, many places.
Easiest places to find me are I am the co-host of Tool Talk Radio, and I am also on MCFC Radio and Nerds of Wisdom. All can be found at themighty990.com.
And Lynda and I and Allan are all on the Seance Room,
Yes.
which is a live podcast now on Friday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central Time. And we do an hour show, and we talk about all things paranormal and weird. And then, of course, I have my other podcast with the great medium Billy Roberts called Afterlife Radio. So thank you all for coming out. It's been a wonderful night, and I hope you all have pleasant nightmares. Good night.
I know I am. Good night.
Good night.